Minister Seth Tekpe says Ghana's debt to GDP ratio has crossed the critical 60% mark. Is this sustainable, and is Ghana again on course to becoming HIPIC?
The provisional debt stock at the end of September stood at 69.7 billion, and this was made up of Ghana cedis, made up of 40.6 billion Ghana cedis, or 12.7 billion US dollars, and 29 billion Ghana cedis, and 9.1 billion US dollars for external and domestic debt components, respectively.
And this is today's big story. Now, presenting the 2015 budget statement to Parliament Wednesday, Finance Minister Seth Tekpe said provisional public debt stock as at end of September 2014 stood at 69,705.90 million. That's equivalent to $21,733.51 million. That means the debt stock currently stands at 60.8% of the country's total domestic gross domestic product, GDP. But Seth Tekpe insisted the loans contracted have been put to prudent use.
The provisional debt stock at the end of September stood at 69.7 billion, and this was made up of Ghana cedis, made up of 40.6 billion Ghana cedis, or 12.7 billion US dollars, and 29 billion Ghana cedis, and 9.1 billion US dollars for external and domestic debt components, respectively. It is worth knowing that some of the loans contracted were used to finance major infrastructure projects that include the following. These projects that would inure to the long-term benefit of the country include the Ghana National Gas Processing Plant to help solve the energy crisis, refurbishment and expansion of the Ridge Hospital, the University of Ghana Teaching Hospital, expansion of the Pond Water Pumping Station, the Kwame Nkrumah Interchange, popularly called Safu Line, the Tetekwashi to Medina Road project, the Achivotel, the construction of affordable housing units. Mr. Speaker, the Kumasi Central Market, the Kasua Interchange, the provision of 200 metro miles transit and 295 canal buses, and the renovation of Parliament House, as well as the reconfiguration of the house from domestic bonds.
Well, let's get onto the telephone lines now and do some serious analysis of the issues that were raised. Now, Dr. John Gachi is joining us. Dr. Gachi is senior lecturer at UCC Business School. He's a chartered economist. And on the other line is also Dr. Twineboa Senso, who is director of Bastiat Society. Dr. Twineboa Senso, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Now, I haven't had the opportunity to ask you your general impressions about the budget. all through. I mean, there have been discussions and suggestions from analysts who have said that the budget is more like a rhetoric, the same blah, 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 repetition of what we had in 2014. Do you see that way?
Yes. For you having the opportunity to go through the budget, I was able to read two main points from it. One, government expects to narrow its budget deficit to 6.5% GDP in 2015, as compared to 9.6 in 2014, and they believe that the target inflation will be around 11.5% in 2015. To me, I thought that it was on the point. But our next issue was all these figures being made available. Government was trying to expand the non-traditional export from US 2.3 billion to US 5 billion was on the point. But the next question is, what are the institutions? Because they have already indicated EXIM and that of EBIT going to play the major role, helping to make sure that they expand the export market. The question we ask now is this institution going to be well empowered to be able to use sound scientific analysis to go through their work in order that we can prevent any manipulation from the system whereby this institution tries sometimes working in favor of friends, relatives, and sometimes party faithful. If such systems could be put in place for the correction to be made to the benefit of the economy, then we can hope that something beneficial will be able to take place within our economy.
Right, Dr. Chineboas, and so I'll return to you, and then we'll continue the discussion along the 60.08%, which is our current debt stock. Let's get onto the other telephone and speak to Dr. John Gachi. As I introduced earlier, John Gachi is a chartered economist and a senior lecturer at the UCC Business School. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Now, our debt stock currently standing at 60.8%. Does this come as a surprise to you?
No, it doesn't come as a surprise because majority of Ghanaians have become very sensitive to the issue of debt, and from time to time we keep on being updated on the quantum of debt. We all do know that we are inching towards the debt sustainability threshold, so it is not a surprise at all.
Is this an indication that we are heading towards HIPIC again?
I don't think so. HIPIC means that you have reached a point quite specifically. You have shown that you don't have the ability to repay your debt, and that is seriously affecting other economic activities in your country. It's affecting social intervention, it's affecting social service delivery, etc. That is when institutions like IMF and World Bank will come in to see if they can support it. But that is not the situation in which we are.
Right.
This is just an indication that we have reached a point that we need to look at our debt management process again to ensure that it becomes more sustainable as we go along.
What about the point of stop borrowing? Have we not gotten to that point yet?
I think the threshold indicates to you that you have reached a point that you need to retreat, do critical analysis, so that even if it becomes necessary to take debt, it might be taken to areas that it can affect key strategic economic infrastructure of the economy, so that will contribute to growth, so that in the future that growth can swallow part of the debt, so that it becomes sustainable as we go out.
Right, Doctor.
So the 60% point is an indication that you need to be seriously very careful.
Yeah, you need to be seriously very careful. I'll hold you and go on to the other telephone line, Dr. Chineboas, so he's still there. Doc, I still put the same question to you. Do you not think that we are heading back to HIPIC? Dr. Gachi says he doesn't think so. You share his view?
Yes, I share the same view with him.
Okay.
The only, as you also emphasize on the point, we need to be very careful in terms of our expenditure level. It has been, I think, a culture that we are involved in so many conspicuous types of expenditure, where we try as much as possible to get ourselves involved in certain level of expenditure. To us, in economic analysis, we believe that it has not been taught well. Because if we are seeing economy as a scarcity, as a first lesson, then we have to always be careful in how we read through in certain steps we take to be able to make certain expenses, because we know its effect has a very strong effect to the people of the country. So we always have to consider, and I share the same assertion with my brother very well.
Right. Now, still on the fiscal aspects of the budget, government is targeting a deficit of 6.5% of GDP. Can we attain that?
We could only, as we have emphasized from our very first point, that they need to be very careful in terms of their expenditure. The government has a very strong think tank economics around him. And we believe that if we have a problem, then there is also a solution to it. So the people of this country had employed them into that position to manage the problem that is ahead of us. Because if we believe there was no problem, then there wouldn't have been any necessity to employ anybody to take in charge to manage the economy. So we brought them there to handle the physical crises that are there. And we believe that that is why it needs innovative thinking, to put them in place for them to take steps that are to the benefit and to empower the economy. And that is where I share the same view with my brother.
Right, innovative thinking. Let me go back to you, Dr. Gachi. Government is saying that tax revenue is targeted at 5.4 billion Ghana cedis for the year end 2015. Is this a realistic target?
Over the years, we have not been achieving our targets in terms of revenue mobilization. It is ambitious. We need to work very hard to achieve that. Much of the delivery in terms of revenue mobilization will depend on what mechanisms are put in place to block leakages and loopholes in the system. It will also depend on how the economic management is able to engage in some form of positive activity in terms of energy delivery in 2015, because that is the basis of economic activity in the country, and that is what is so much hit by the challenges we are going through. So if we're able to strengthen mechanisms in blocking leakages and then ensure proper reforms in tax administration in the country, and also manage to deal with the energy situation, especially in the beginning of 2015. That is that opportunity that we can raise in more revenue to the country. But there is a need for hard work in order to achieve that.
Right, need for hard work. Gentlemen, I'll have you hold briefly, and we'll go back to the finance minister to listen to excess of the budget. He touched on medium-term and 2015 target budget targets. Let's take a listen, and then we'll continue with our discussion.
Mr. Speaker, I turn to the medium term. Mr. Speaker, based on the macroeconomic framework, the specific macroeconomic targets to be pursued for the medium term are as estimated. An average real GDP growth rate of 6.8%, an average non-oil GDP growth of 4.4%, inflation within 8% with a band of plus or minus 2%, a budget deficit of 3.5% by 2017, and gross international reserves of 4 months of import cover by 2017. Mr. Speaker, the specific macro targets for 2015 are non-oil real GDP growth of 2.7%, overall real GDP growth of 3.9%, and end-year inflation growth of 11.5%, overall budget deficit equivalent to 6.5% of GDP, and gross international reserves with equivalent of 3 months import cover. Mr. Speaker, total non-oil revenue and grants for 2015 fiscal year is estimated at 26.1 billion or 21% of non-oil GDP. This represents 13.5% increase over the projected outturn for 2014. The total revenue for oil is estimated at 4.2 billion or 31.9% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, Total tax revenue is estimated at 5.4 billion, representing 18.8% of GDP. This shows an increase of 31% over the projected outturn of 2014. Of this amount, non-oil tax revenue is estimated to grow by 25% to 23 billion, or equivalent of 18.8% of non-oil GDP.
Well, Dr. Gachi, I'm sure that you've been following you followed the presentation of the budget, and this is just to refresh your mind on the targets that were some of the targets that the finance minister went through. Quick reaction from you, Dr. Gachi.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm saying that I'm sure you followed the presentation of the budget. So if you heard the recap that we played, I'd like you to quickly give your reaction to that, and then we'll continue with the discussion.
Actually, I didn't hear a thing about what what you were playing. So if you can just highlight some of the
Right. I mean, the highlights were many, including one, the government going to Parliament to seek a bill under certificate of urgency to add what the government calls special petroleum tax of 17.5%, which will be chargeable. And there were other mentions. I might not be able to go through all of them, but a lot of targets were set. I mean, and a lot of promises were made. The question I want to ask on the back of that is that following through the presentation of the budget, did you see that it is austere enough? Because I remember that there were hints dropped that we were to expect an austere budget.
Well, as I keep on saying, some of us indicated clearly before the IMF came on board that most of the programs that we were implementing, they already had the feature of what the IMF would have access to do. So for me, I see this just as a continuation of the program of trying to realign expenditure, trying to inject new ways of raising more revenue. Some of these measures may not be so palatable, but they become very necessary. Of course, trying to swap 17.5% VAT with the existing excise duty means that government is targeting to raise in more sustainable revenue from petroleum subsector. But normally what we do expect is that if such a thing happens, because petroleum is sensitive to transportation, is so sensitive to the fare that people will pay in future. So what we normally look at for, if such a thing happens, you look at the number of related social intervention programs the government brings on board at the same time. That will actually relate to the very people who will be affected by the 17.5% VAT. I've heard about 200 Scania buses from Sweden to augment the fleet of Metro Mass. Perhaps that is one of the social interventions they have in mind. I've also seen that they will continue with the agriculture sector subsidy in terms of fertilizer and other related social intervention programs. It is now left to the managers of the economy whether they have foreseen that, and that is the reason why they have packaged some of these social interventions, because anytime these type of taxes are imposed, we need to be cushioned, and I have seen some of those cushioning factors in the budget.
Dr. Gachi, we're grateful for your time on today's big story. We're very grateful. Dr. Gachi has been with us all morning and doing the pre-budget and post-budget analysis. Now, Dr. Trinibuasen, so if you're still there, let me bring us back to some of the targets that were mentioned in the budget. We will go to the additional 17.5% VAT and speak to an energy expert on it. But in the meantime, there being a mention of extending of the stabilization levy up to 2017. This is going to be very harsh on the companies which contribute to the levy. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, please, may you repeat the question again? I could not hear. The lines were breaking from there. So
that's fine. That's very fine. I'm saying that among the fiscal things that were read to us in the budget was an extension of the stabilization levy up to 2017. And I'm asking whether you feel that this will not hit those companies contributing to the stabilization levy fund. It will not hit them too hard.
One way it's going to hit them, to me, to my point of analyzing it, then I see it having an effect on them. But one way, the other, my brother just shared it from his assertion. We think government need to begin working on certain social interventions, but it needs to be more realistic enough in such a way that the interventions are not even going to benefit people that are not supposed to be beneficial to it. So that is one aspect I see it from. And I also realize that they raise an issue of trying to freeze the public sector recruitment. And I share the same idea that freezing the public sector recruitment is not only the answer, but also being able to put proper infrastructures there to be able to strengthen the human resource efficiency there.
Dr. Sensor, I'm sorry, I'll cut you in. We don't have a lot of time, but I need to ask you a yes or no question. Do you see the budget from how you're posturing? You see the budget as very good, while other people have said that it doesn't offer a lot of hope. You think that is good, right? And these are good approaches that have been put into the budget in order to help us get back on our feet?
Yes, I see it in that perspective, but my question then falls on the realistic implementation of it in order that it doesn't just become promises and dreams in a political order, but it really address the issues of the people.
That's right. Right, Dr. Trinibua Senso, we're grateful for your time on today's big story. We have a lot more to cover in a very short time, and we're grateful that you could join us. John Peter Amewu is Director of Policy and Research at the Africa Center for Energy Policy. He's joining us now. Mr. Amewu, good evening.
Hello?
Good evening, sir. Mr. Amewu.
Good evening, please, and good evening to your listeners.
Right, great. Now, many people are complaining about government saying that Parliament government has placed before Parliament a bill to approve a special petroleum levy of 17.5% petroleum tax, actually, and under a certificate of urgency is expected to kick in. You think this is the right approach?
Well, I think this government has not been fair to Ghanaians at all. And Parliament, if they can, must resist, coming into force of this 17.5%. There are a number of reasons why I think government has not been fair. You agree with me that the last part of this year, the last quarter of this year, petroleum prices, in terms of the crude price in the world market has fallen to almost about 28%. That's in respect to the Brent. And then the WTI has fallen almost about 30%. What we expect, therefore, was to see a total reduction in terms of the automatic price adjustment formula.
Right.
Government refused for that formula to work, and that gives Ghanaians, a little reduction of just less than about 2%. Now we expect a further reduction in pricing. After the last automatic price adjustment formula, prices have fallen again, about 5% in regard to the Brent. We haven't seen any reduction. Now only to come out and impose a 17.5%, on petroleum prices. I think this is uncalled for. It is unjustifiable. And for one reason, government is putting forward for this must be resisted. Understand the government is saying that because they want to raise the revenue. That is a lazy way of doing things. I mean, if you want to raise the revenue, look at the other broader aspects of this country and broaden your tax base. Petroleum sector is the easiest way of raising revenue. And any government that wants to use that sector to achieve its goal of revenue maximization is, of course, not living up to the expectations of its citizens. And so I think Ghanaians must resist this tax. This is uncalled for, it's unjustifiable, it's wicked and criminal.
Right, uncalled for, wicked and criminal. We'll end it there, Peter Amewu, and jump onto the other telephone line. Mahama Hudu is Executive Director at the Center for Energy Research. He's also joining us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
You heard Peter Amewu saying that this 17.5% on a special petroleum tax is unjustifiable, uncalled for, and wicked. You share this view?
Thank you very much for the time, and then good evening to viewers.
Good evening.
Yeah. When you consider the petroleum sector, we have the tax within the petroleum sector is quite different from the normal tax system that we have. And then when you come to the petroleum sector, you realize that we have an upstream and downstream. Upstream operations, but it's a heavy expenditure, has different or a very complex kind of tax system. and then downstream is just a normal tax system that we have. It's similar to the normal tax system that we have. And you also agree with me that government taxes are the fuel on which a nation will thrive on. So, of course, we all know that as citizens, we need to pay taxes. As citizens, we need to maybe pay the necessary levies that we need to keep our country going. And then it is the responsibility of the government to determine which sector or which particular point in time that
Well, I think we've lost Mahama Hudu. We'll try and re-establish contact, but we're discussing the budget. And Peter Meo is still on the line, though. Peter, this is where we are. I mean, the fact is that we cannot do anything about it. The taxes are going to hit us. And already we've heard that they've been hoarding in anticipation of the new prices kicking in. Peter, if you're there. Hello, Peter Meo. Right, Peter is gone. We're still trying to get Mahama Hudu back onto the telephone line. We're discussing the budget, which went on today. Mahama Hudu, we're told, is on, and our time is running out. Mahama Hudu, if you're back on, we lost you earlier. You were saying something about that tax, and the key question I want to ask is that it's going to get very difficult for a lot of people who may fall within the bracket that the fuel will affect everything, actually. You don't think it's out of place, that is wicked? That is uncalled for?
I was saying that government is the responsibility of government to determine which particular sector of the economy that you need to tax on, and then all that. So petroleum sector is not difficult. It's not very different.
Okay.
But I think it's unjustifiable because I am not in town, and then the information I got is that the sector minister, Mr. Setepe, Honorable Setepe, came and issue a certificate of agency. And then what worries me, or what I keep asking, is that what informed the agency of it? I know government needs to raise funds, maybe government is indebted and government has to maybe raise some funds. But what calls for the agency of it? That it cannot follow the due process that we all know in Parliament for a bill to be passed. So for me, I just feel that maybe government does not actually fail. The government does not understand the suffering that is meted onto the ordinary Ghanaian, maybe or the entire Ghanaian populace because of the current economic situation that we are passing through. So for me, it's actually, excuse me, my language, maybe to say, it's just sheer wickedness. I do not see why government should.
Yeah, that's
maybe, yes.
That's about
so
the same expression.
I actually share the views of they said those who also said maybe it's not just justifiable at this particular point in time to issue such a levy. 17.5 is way too much. We all understand that government needs to, as a matter of fact, like I said, maybe raise funds, maybe through taxes. There is no way. No, I'm not expecting the president to pull something from his pocket, not the minister, but everybody must collectively pay. But it's unjust. Why such a rush?
It's unjustified.
Put it through the due processes. So it's for me, it's not something that we should all condemn. We should all come out and speak against it.
Speak against it. Mahama Hudu, we're grateful for your time. Mahama Hudu is Executive Director of Center for Energy Research. And let me finish off one last question with Peter John Amewu. Peter. Good evening, hello? Peter. If you can hear me, let me ask you one more question. What would you have wished to hear from the finance minister? I mean, if you didn't expect the 17.5% increase on petroleum, how else could he have mopped up perhaps some revenue from the petroleum sector?
Well, I spoke about other strategic directions of increasing the tax base. You know, the black economy of this country is so huge, and government going to do something about it, taxing those various elements. You know, and so if government needs to increase revenue, they need to come back to the black economy, which I think is one of the critical areas we need to look at.
And when you say black economy, what exactly do you mean?
So those areas, the artisans, the masons, carpenters, the painters, all that works around within something that are not taxed. There are several and thousands of them that raises money much more than you and I pay our monthly salary. And those areas have been left untaxed because it's very difficult for any government, you know, to approach them for tax. And that is why government is going for this easiest way. I'm saying that the easiest way is always not the best. And any government that wants to approach tax maximization through the easiest approach is a very lazy government. And I don't think this is the right way to do it. Also, the agency, as my good friend has put it up there, Why are they raising this tax level at this particular point in time? If you have an indication or a force or directly from the IMF, that doesn't mean we, the ordinary Ghanaians, should be suffering for that. We can't suffer with management of this economy. And the mismanagement might rest solely on government, and they might find an alternative way of doing this. I call on Ghanaians to resist this approach. It's not the best way of showing a good leadership at all.
Right. John Amiu, we're grateful for your time on today's Big Story. And thanks to you all for staying with us. We'll be right back with an interactive segment.